This 911 Strong podcast is brought to you by our partners at the Police Credit Union of California.
As a financial institution founded by law enforcement for law enforcement and their families over 65 years ago, they have the experience and understanding to help you with all your financial needs,
including exclusive products designed specifically for law enforcement professionals. To become a member today, visit thepolicecu.org. That's the police, the letter C, and the letter U.org.
Or call 800-222-1391 and tell them you heard about them from the 911 Strong podcast. Hey friends, welcome to this episode of the 911 Strong podcast. Today we're going to talk about accountability. Everybody wants accountability with the cops and dispatchers. Kristen, did you know that? We want you
they always hold us accountable. Let me tell you.
But here's a twist. They wouldn't have to hold us accountable if we weren't at the scenes where that caused us to get there. Why don't we talk about the accountability of people?
Oh, now you're asking too much.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll find out on this episode of the 911 Strong podcast, which starts
right now.
Station to all units.
Prepare to copy.
You're listening to the 911 Strong podcast.
Don't act like I never told you.
With Aram and Kristen, bringing you stimulating discussion.
No, I like the sound of that.
An entertaining conversation.
And now, here's Kristen and Aram.
Hey friends, welcome back to the 911 Strong podcast. With me as always is Kristen.
Hey. Hi.
as she flips her blonde hair for those listening on audio.
Yes.
This was something that we've talked about before, and we kind of do this on private discussions. And remember, the whole premise of this podcast was we're having our private discussions. We're thinking other people might want to hear this. So this is one that's manifested itself from our private discussions that we do that we think you guys want to hear. But what triggered this is, I don't know if you guys remember, but back in 2020, a man by the name of Amir Locke, he was 22, was fatally shot by police after police entered his residence executing a search warrant. They didn't release the body cam footage back then, but 2 years later, they have. What I find interesting is that they waited so long to do that, because we'll get into it. But if they would have shown this video back in March of 2020, the officers, in my opinion, would have been vindicated. It was a no-brainer. Bad guy hiding under a blanket, holding a gun in his hand, and what's the phrase? He plays stupid games, he wins stupid prizes. But at the time, they were reluctant to show this video. And the story was, he was sleeping under a blanket, and he sleeps near a gun because it's a high crime neighborhood, and just in case bad guys roll in. You can clearly see he was in a crouched position under this blanket, and he had his gun pistol gripped, ready to go. That is not consistent with his story. So that leads me to the accountability of the bad guys. Everybody calls for police to be accountable, right? Oh, he did this. But what got us there in the first place? We wouldn't have been at your house and had this unfortunate tragedy happen had you not had done something that caused the police to arrive, right? Let's address that first. Let's go to the root problem.
Yeah.
No, what do you think?
Oh, I'm all for it, because I get the calls.
Yeah.
Majority of these things that have been in the news, I want to say probably, if I want to be nice, I'll say 90%.
Okay.
Of all of these shootings or questionable police brutality, things that are smeared across the news, were received by people calling on these, I'm going to call them suspects.
Okay.
Or disturbing parties.
Sure.
All of them call on them because the people are either afraid, or they can't handle it, or they just don't want to deal with it. So they'll call the police to deal with it. So had that person not created an issue to whoever was in their general surroundings, the police wouldn't have showed up in the first place. Right. The day would have continued on, and everybody would have went on with their lives.
Yes.
And no news field day. But people can't handle certain things, so they call the police. Some well justified and some not so justified. and they have us go out there to be the bad guys. And then sometimes the situation escalates and then, we get torched in the media.
And that's exactly what it is. I tell people all the time, I get when I do interviews or whatever, people ask, why do you think people have this negative feeling towards cops? And it's a valid question, because if you think about it, most interactions with police are negative.
Right.
If we initiate the contact, it's because we're enforcing something, right?
Right.
You hardly ever see someone say, hey, the reason why I stopped you is I wanted to tell you your hair was really nice.
Oh, well, then we get slapped with harassment.
Right. But we usually tell people, hey, the reason why I stopped you is because broken taillight. You failed to stop here. And then they're going to take it negative, whether they agree with you or they want to fight you with it, argue with you on the spot. It's a negative contact, right? Here we go. I did it, but hundreds of other people do it too. But I was the one that was caught. Or if they initiate the contact, it's like you said, you receive the phone call. They're in some sort of conflict that they can't handle. It's not a good conflict. It's not like, well, can I have the police? I can't decide between vanilla and chocolate, but I'm going to have ice cream either way. No, it's never like that. It's a bad.
Or at least in LA, we're not going to get a call of, hey, we're having a barbecue. We have extra food. You guys want any? No.
Right. No, it's a conflict. So it's negative.
It's always
negative when we initiate it. It's negative when they initiate it. So it's a negative. So already our backs are against the wall. It's not like, it's
to somebody. To somebody, we're the bad guy, right? Yes. Maybe not to the initial caller, but to the person they're calling on. We're the jerks for showing up. We're not the ones who called.
Right. And everybody thinks we're immediately on somebody's side when we get there.
Yeah.
You're on their side because they're the ones that called you. Like, no, we don't know what's going on. You talk to the dispatcher. Yeah. The dispatcher relayed us pertinent information, not information based on opinion.
Yeah.
Well, based on the way
if it was opinion, we would be hanging up the phone half the time. Like, we're not going.
Right. Yeah. That'd be great though. Like, hey, caller states that the neighbor, they're in a dispute, but I personally think that the caller's wrong. Yeah. Can you imagine the bias that would happen if we showed up based on your opinion?
I mean, I wouldn't be too objective to that. Like, some of these calls, like, it's trash day and I put my trash cans out here and they park their car too close.
Yes.
Go move your trash can. No, I want the police to come here and talk to my neighbor. Like,
right.
Oh my gosh.
And we sometimes think, why do you need police to deal with this? Your grown adults should be able to handle this. But as you said, that trash can incident, it triggered a memory. Remember a few years back, we had the man that was stabbed to death. He was murdered because he wouldn't remove the dog's poop on a shared strip of grass between the yards.
No, I don't remember that one. But dude, share.
Okay. Asian neighbors. So I'm giving specifics, so hopefully you can remember this. And they have driveways that are next to each other, but it's separated by a chain link fence and a strip of grass, like a narrow strip of grass that goes the length of the driveways. This guy is out there watering his lawn.
Oh, wait. Is this our call or are you talking? Oh, okay. Okay. I went to a different incident. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Long story short, the guy's dog poops. And while he on that strip of grass, that's where he takes him out to specifically to poop. And the neighbor, I'm forgetting. I forget. One of the neighbors waters that lawn and sprays the dog poop. And I guess a little bit gets on his side of the yard. And he repeatedly told him over and over. And maybe this was a guy that should have called the police to intervene, but never called the police. And the next thing you know, he did it again. That was the last straw, and he stabbed him to death.
Yeah.
I don't mean to laugh about it, but
no, that's what we call gallows humor. And it's a natural police response to most.
What's going on with your camera there?
I know. I crossed my legs and the wires got crossed.
Oh.
And so it tugged at my computer. I'm sorry, people.
Got it. I was going to say, you have to fire your camera gun. But going back to accountability, that's one situation right there where, police probably should have been called out. And let's just say we were called out to that specific incident I gave prior.
Yeah.
And we said, okay, well, it was an argument. They're fine now. We settled. We kept the peace and left. And then that happened a week later. Guess who else they're going to keep accountable? Us. Oh, police should have recognized that this guy was a danger to others.
Yes.
And didn't do anything. He should have arrested him.
Well, okay. Well, since you brought that up, look at the, what was that poor girl's name? Was it Gabby? That was with her boyfriend and they were in the camper van and they were stopped for a
Oh yeah,
domestic.
Gabby Petito.
Right. Same kind of thing happened.
Yes.
You had the officers that stopped, did what they could with the domestics, separated them, everything else. They, in my opinion, they did all that they could do.
Yeah.
And still, because there's so much pain and hurt because of that case, like they wanted to hold those officers accountable.
Yes. So I don't know if you saw the same documentary I did.
No, I
but
didn't watch a documentary.
Okay, so there's this documentary out, and it shows the body cam footage the officers were wearing it.
Okay, I saw
And
that.
it was two different agencies. It was the park rangers,
Mhm,
U.S. Park Police, and the state police.
mhm.
And both of them were aware of domestic violence laws. If you report domestic violence, somebody has to get arrested. But they were hung up on a technicality. Gabby didn't want him arrested. Gabby was like, no, yes, he put his hands on me, but it's not a big deal. It really wasn't a big deal. I don't have any visible injuries. And you would cause more problems by arresting him. You know, a simpler solution was to intervene, tell us to knock it off. She gave a very compelling argument for not arresting the guy's name. I forget his name. And the officers were actually like, hey, you know what? The laws are very specific on domestic violence laws. We are very, it's very black and white. As law enforcement officers, we, for the most part, can adhere to the spirit of the law, right?
Mhm.
What was the law intended to do? A solution. But with domestic violence, because there's such a liability where if we would have just said, hey, you know what, why don't you separate for the day and call it off? And for the normal or average person, they would say, yeah, that's a good solution. But what happens when that guy decides he's going to have a few drinks later and get really upset about it?
Mhm.
Instead of being in a safe place behind bars, is now has open access to go to the victim and hurt her.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So our hands are tied with that sort of stuff. But you're right. This documentary
Mhm.
spent a lot of time focusing on what the officers didn't do.
Mhm. Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
I bet. Yeah. But then, if you do other things and you intervene too much, then they get mad because you shouldn't have been there or you weren't trained specifically for that, when it comes to mental illness, or the homeless and that kind of thing. So it's like, we're damned if we do and damned if we don't. We're just in between a rock and a hard space half the time. We're just like the, what is it? What do you call it? The punching bag?
Yeah. I was going to say we're the easy target.
Yeah.
And it got to a boiling point here in California where people were like, you know what, you guys are fascists and putting everybody behind bars. And people have, with drugs, people have a problem with drugs. Homeless people, they have a right to live homeless.
Yeah.
And what happens? They make these laws to loosen these restrictions, right?
Mhm.
Methamphetamine is now a ticket, or it used to be a felony.
Yeah.
And regardless of how damaging methamphetamines are and how many lives it's ruined, it's a ticket.
Yeah.
And guess what? In LA County, guess where that ticket goes? It's dismissed right in the trash.
Yeah.
I supervise our detective bureau, so I see all the rejects that come from court and all the 11.5 under the influence tickets, possession of methamphetamine tickets. The officers make the arrest because it's still a crime. But the way we're not locking them behind bars anymore, we're writing them a ticket to appear to court because that's what the courts want us to do. It's such a waste of time and resources because the courts kick it back and say, we're not enforcing these, the case dismissed.
Yeah.
How frustrating. So what happens? The people that are using drugs on the street need to support their habit.
Mhm.
They don't have the financial means to support this habit most of the time. So they commit crimes.
Aside from the handouts getting from the government.
Yeah. So thefts, burglaries, break-ins, all happen. And the public is like, what are you doing about this, officers?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. You guys voted to decriminalize all this stuff.
We get those phone calls. You guys let him go. Like, no. We did not let him go. It's the district attorney that's letting him go. It's the state of California that's letting him go. We're doing our part. We're responding. We're confiscating. We're, putting them in jail, but they're out before the paperwork's even done. And it doesn't matter because it's going to get thrown out in court anyways.
Yeah. And who voted those people in?
Not me.
Like, yeah, I sure didn't, but we happen to
Yeah.
live in a county where they voted
Yeah.
a very I don't want to say liberal because even liberal people are upset about this. But man, I can't even come up with a word to describe George Gascon. But our DA in LA County is crazy. He's absolutely crazy.
Well, yeah, he just doesn't care.
Yeah.
He doesn't care because no one is holding him accountable. That's why.
Everywhere he
victims-
goes.
Yeah.
He went to San Francisco and he was the DA up there. They loved
Yeah.
him. He's like, you know what? I already
Well-
destroyed San Francisco. Let me destroy LA. They voted
Yeah.
him in.
I know. Well, yeah. I mean, not to go through those rabbit holes, but yeah, he made it in. And now we're stuck with him. And hopefully they can recall him, but I'm not hopeful that'll even work. But
Yeah.
you know,
That's drugs. And a lot of people feel indifferent about drugs. But here's one that pisses a lot of people off: the trespassing.
oh yeah.
If
Yeah, they
someone-
call all the time about the transients, all the time.
So
or in LA, as we call them, unhoused neighbors.
So yeah. How about this? How about you wake up one morning and there's a stranger in your living room?
Well, in my house, that probably wouldn't go over too well
Yeah.
since we're armed.
Yeah. Oh, but if you shoot him, you're in trouble, right?
To some extent, if I'm in
Yeah.
fear for my life, then not really.
Yeah. There's a story I'm going to bring up. I just saw it on Instagram, but we'll get back to that in a minute. But my point with all this is, let's just say you have a peaceful resolution. You call the police and, hey, I got this guy who doesn't belong here, regardless if he's homeless or not. He could be your neighbor. He's not allowed to be in my house. He's in there. Can you arrest him for trespassing? Yes, I sure will. Before that officer is done leaving the station, guess what? The jail has to release him because it's a case that's one of the immediate automatic dismissals outlined by George Gascon's office. Insane. And no wonder why you see on the news people going into Neiman Marcus, grabbing tons of clothing and walking out, and there's nothing they can do about it. They're closing down businesses left and right because they can't afford the losses.
Yeah.
And
It's ridiculous.
Who absorbs the brunt of that now? Somebody has to pay for that. We, the customers that actually pay for things.
Yeah. So now inflation goes and everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I know. I didn't realize. I was talking to Danny. They had done some actual, I guess, gun recoveries over this last week. They've gotten quite a few, I think, in my opinion. And I didn't realize it's a misdemeanor for them to have their ghost guns and that kind of thing too. So, you know, yeah, we're getting guns off the street, but it's a misdemeanor. They don't really pay for it. One of the guys we got was on probation for having multiple guns.
Right.
And here he was again, not in jail with more guns.
Right.
So
they're punishing the law-abiding people that can lawfully own a gun. But if they carry one more round in their magazine that they're allowed to,
right? Yeah.
Well, hey, guess what? You're going to prison, buddy.
Yeah. I think I can't carry more than 10 with me.
Right.
In my magazine.
Well, it depends which constitution you abide by, but
yeah.
The Second Amendment says you have a right to carry as many bullets as you want.
Yes. But my magazine, I think, can only have 10.
In California.
In California. I know. One day I will get out of here, maybe.
Well, it's funny. The Supreme Court is currently ruling it. I think the Ninth Circuit Court, which is a very liberal California court, they're based in, I think, Ninth Circuit. I forget. Is it Pasadena or San Francisco? One of the two. We have two circuit courts that really have traditionally followed a liberal path to justice. But I was very surprised to hear that they were actually hearing the case of whether or not high capacity mag restrictions are legal or illegal in California. So that'll be an interesting outcome that they determine. But man, we do this. We go off on a tangent. I want to go back to.
Sorry, guys.
I mean, I guess it is relative. It's talking about accountability. How they want us, the people that I say us, police officers, but also law-abiding citizens, to follow the rules. And for the most part, we do. But we're the ones that are being vilified. And they're pointing the fingers at us. Well, you're the problem. You don't want homeless people, so you're the problem. No. Why don't we go to the root problem? Homelessness is a problem. Let's spend some money fixing that instead of all these millions of dollars it takes to change the laws to make it easier for them. drug use, homelessness, driving without a license. That's a perfect example. I understand that it's hard for some people not to get a license. So the laws have been loosened for that. I get that. If you came to this country and you're considered undocumented, you're here legally, but you're undocumented because the country you came from didn't do a good job documenting your birth status. It's hard to prove
Yeah.
your birth. So yeah, I get that. If you have a social security number, you have all these other identifying factors, and all you want to do is drive so you can get to and from work and take your kids to school. Yeah, get a driver's license.